Okay, so this talk is called Stakes is High. I kind of adapted it from a few talks that I've given in this class. What are the methodological stakes in language literacy and hip hop research? And that's something that I asked you guys in your reflective writing that you did the other day, right? What is at stake for you? And what is at stake for the communities that you're researching when you do your research? And so today's talk is about Cardi B, but I also want us to think about who it's really about beyond these artists when we do this literacy research. So these terms that we're engaging with, methods. So methods are how you study what you study, right? I did close reading, I did interviews, but methodology is the kind of theoretical discussion of why you're studying it that way. Here I want to actually stop and have a conversation with you for a few minutes. So I'm going to pause the recording in a minute. But I asked you last weekend to read one of these three articles: the Richardson, the Rickford and King, or the Kanagaraja, and they each use different methods. And I want us to just kind of take a few minutes to talk through what you were noticing when you read these articles. We're thinking about method and methodology, why scholars choose the methods that they do, and the fact that your methods are connected to your goals and your argument, right? The way that you produce information and analyze it shapes the types of claims that you are going to make. So, why are stakes high in this work? Today, we're going to talk about Cardi B. I'm a big fan. I don't know how you could not be, but on the left here is a image that literally popped up on my Facebook feed of Cardi B. She has a Reebok deal. So they write, Cardi B has that fresh nails did, hair did attitude, which to me is, I would call that incorrect Av, or like not fluent Av. I don't know if you guys agree. But so those are things where, like, there's av or language use in the public sphere. We can study it. It's interesting, but the stakes are very profound. And so on the right, I have another something that popped up on my Facebook feed, this one from actually an account that I follow. But this is from an Institute for Jewish and specifically Yiddish and European research. And they write that the scholar Blumenthal argued that the Nazi language was one of the most important tools used by the Germans in the physical extermination of the Jewish people. And at the very bottom there, you see that in documentation about World War II, about the Holocaust, that gas chambers were referred to as farmhouses. And I think we can think of a lot of examples, unfortunately, in our current society that use similar euphemistic language. So that's not really a dialect issue, but it shows the power of language. Something I've noticed among abolitionists more and more is that they're talking about kids in cages or putting people in cages, right? Trying to break through that euphemism of imprisonment, which kind of goes to this black box, versus a cage is so much more visceral and kind of cuts through our sort of rejection of like dealing with that. This is another story that came out around when I made this presentation the first time in 2019. And this was the story of a security guard in Wisconsin that was fired by the school district for using the N-word on the job. And the school district defended itself by saying that they had a zero tolerance policy about using the N-word in their schools, which sounds well and good until you start digging into the story and you find out that the security guard was Black himself. And actually, he was telling a Black student to not call him the N-word. Wisconsin has one of the worst states for racial disparities in the country. And so there's interesting questions there about what actual work does having a zero tolerance policy for the N-word do at schools that are sometimes maybe full of Black students that do use that word, that are run by white people that do not use that word and made that rule? And so there's really interesting kind of messed up dynamics here, right? So doing a more cultural analysis in addition to just the language question allows us to see these complexities. When do we get to Cardi B? Oh my God, she's here. Okay. So we're going to talk about Cardi B today, but I also want us to remember Rachel Jeantel. And I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about the Rickford article that you read. So at the top are just pictures of Rihanna that I just couldn't bring myself to delete, because I did this talk with an analysis of her VMAs performance in an earlier iteration. But down on the left, you can see Cardi B on the cover of Interview magazine that just came out this week, and she gets interviewed by Mariah Carey and she looks amazing. But also on the right, you have Rachel Jeantel, who was a key witness in the George Zimmerman trial in 2013, which shocked me to realize that you guys were just little kids. Her testimony was so dismissed, not in a legal sense, but what the Rickford and King article is about how Rachel Jeantel is such a strong AV speaker that it allowed Zimmerman's defense and actually the media subsequently to paint her as really confused and not a reliable witness. But she was actually on the phone with Trayvon when he was stalked and murdered. And so her testimony was extremely key and very clearly, relayed him saying that a stranger was following him. But, her language allowed her to be, her language and the cultural meanings ascribed to her language allowed her key testimony to be really minimized. So this is the article from Rickford and King. Maybe I'll read their abstract. Rachel Jeantel was the leading prosecution witness when George Zimmerman was tried for killing Trayvon Martin, but she spoke in African American vernacular English, and her crucial testimony was dismissed as incomprehensible and not credible. The disregard for her speech in court and the media is familiar to vernacular speakers and puts linguistics itself on trial. Following Saussure, how do we dispel such prejudice and fictions? We show, so this is their argument at using their methods, we show that Jeantel speaks a highly systematic AV with possible Caribbean influence. We also discuss voice quality and other factors that bedeviled her testimony, including dialect unfamiliarity and institutionalized racism. Finally, we suggest strategies for linguists to help vernacular speakers be better heard in courtrooms and beyond. So we see here how their methods of linguistic and sociolinguistic analysis are really connected to their goals, right? So if they want to show that she speaks a highly systematized AV, they have to analyze her speech and show regular AV features. But then to show that there's an experience of racism happening, that's where the socio comes into linguistics, right? So they do a sociolinguistic analysis, not just to show that her language has certain patterns, that's the linguistic side, but also that those patterns get interpreted and ascribed low prestige because of social practices. So this is an example, and one of you brought up that they bring in lots of examples. This is one of their examples from their article that I think is really noteworthy. And I think it's good for us to see their methods at work. So they're showing the risks of an incorrect transcription of a Jamaican Creole speaker on trial in the UK. And they perform a direct transcription. So what are the exact sounds that came out of this witness's mouth using the linguistic alphabet? So that's line 1A. Then underneath that line is a correct translation into standard-ish English, you'll see. And then they give the incorrect translation, that's line 1B, that was written in the court transcript, but only got caught later by a Jamaican Creole interpreter. And so you'll hear what the linguistic alphabet can do when I read this, because I obviously do not speak Jamaican Creole and I don't really have a command of it, but when you read this, you'll hear the accent. So here's what the witness said. When me hear the bap bap, me drop a ground and then me start run. So they translate that as, when I heard the bop bop, the shots, I fell to the ground and then I started to run. But what turned up in the transcripts the first time was, when I heard the shot, I drop the gun and then I run. So that's obviously a problem, to say it lightly. I want to tell you a little bit, I think you've been exposed to some of this stuff, but if you want to do linguistic analysis, here are some of the tools that you'll need. First of all, you'll need the phonetic alphabet. You don't have to use it for every single word. Like, you don't have to put every sentence that you're interested in into the linguistic alphabet. But if you want to show the phonetics of some speech, you could use this selectively to like highlight sounds. This is just, you can Google it really easily, the International Phonetic Alphabet. Then you also need to know some rules of grammar, right? So Rickford and King show that Gentile has regularized Av grammar. So you have to know some of Av grammar if you're trying to talk about it. Or like if you're studying Asian rappers and you're showing them move between multiple languages, if you want to show that they're doing something grammatical, like you'll have to know a little bit of those grammars to make those analyses. So some things that come up a lot in studies of Av are the dropped copula. So in English, you have to use the verb to be a lot. So like if I said, I am fine, or I am good, that's not even actually correct technically, right? But I would always say am. I am fine, thank you, right? But in Av, you can drop the copula, we good, right? You can also drop the copula in Hebrew, a language I learned as a kid. There's dropped copulas in Mandarin, Chinese. So often linguists will note the dropped copula using that little null symbol that I've used here. There's also the habitual be. So that's a different use of the verb to be when something is happening regularly. And the habitual be is part of phases and aspects that there's more tense markers, as you read in the Av article online, than in standard English, right? So you can analyze for those. Av also uses double negatives, which like standard English speakers or teachers will correct all the time, but double negatives are correct in a lot of languages. They're correct in Av. Spanish has double negatives, French has double negatives, right? So you can identify these features in text to prove that Av is happening regularly, or if someone is language blending or code meshing, you can note Av features and standard English features or Spanish features or Mandarin features using these tools. So phonetics, grammar, and then the last one here is lexical items, which literally just means words. So Av has its own lexicon that actually standard English speakers are borrowing from and taking from all the time, right? That's actually the first thing that I'll say we usually appropriate is words. And then if we're like advanced appropriators, we can get into grammatical, right? So we've been seeing a lot of lately, it's the blah, blah, blah for me, right? So that would be an appropriation of like a whole saying or a whole grammar function, but usually lexicon comes first, right? So like on fleek, going viral or something. So I want to look at Up, Cardi B's Up. I just started thinking about it a few weeks ago. It's popular. She just released it. It's very catchy. And I couldn't figure out what the chorus was saying. And so I Googled it and I wanted to know what the chorus was saying. And I think it's interesting. I had my reflexive moment that I always have, because I just am always aware that, you know, anytime I go to the internet to Google what a rapper is saying, I'm conscious that I'm a white consumer that's using digital tools to decipher art that is not made for me. If I don't understand what it's saying, it's really not talking to me. So I think it's valuable to recognize that. Okay, I'm going to read this and then I'm going to cut out of the slideshow for a minute and just show you guys some pages on the internet. So I went on Genius, I looked at the words to the chorus, and I used the annotation of the chorus and found that there's this really interesting linguistic story behind it, that if I wrote a paper about this song, I would like share all this information with my own readers, right? So there's linguistic stuff happening, and then there's also legal and cultural stuff happening. So the chorus of the song says, if it's up, then it's stuck. And that was what I couldn't put together when I was just listening. What Genius tells me is that if it's up, then it's stuck is a phrase from Georgia. So from Southern, like Bayou dialects of Av, so sub-regional dialects of Av. And Cardi says she learned it from Offset, her partner. So another rapper accused Cardi B of stealing his lyrics, and she demanded that she pay him for using his intellectual property, right? So getting into sampling law. But in another article, Genius uses its own collection of lyrics to show that this phrase, if it's up, it's stuck, appears in over 100 rap songs. So here's the Genius annotation. If it's up, then it's stuck. If it's up, then it's stuck. It's Southern slang for a conflict that's going to stay active until it's resolved. She said, it's a Georgia thing. Offset kept saying it. And then they have this whole other article. It's not stolen. It's a common hip hop phrase. But we could actually say it's not a common hip hop phrase. It's probably a common Southern Av phrase. It has appeared in dozens of rap songs. So Genius says the phrase refers to an issue that won't go away until it's properly resolved. And it traces its roots to Southern regional slang with popularity among rappers in Baton Rouge, Mobile, and Atlanta. Genius lyric records show nearly 100 variations of if it's up, it's stuck. So I just thought that was really interesting and like a super interesting case study of a song. I just Googled it for my own joy. But then when I saw this whole story, I started thinking about this lesson. Okay, I'm going to play the video, but I want you to especially like listen to her delivery. But the fashion is too good to skip.
Once upon a time, and I heard that I was ugly. Came from a bitch who nigga wanna fuck on me. I said my face bomb, ass tight, rack stuck up, shack height, jury on me, flashlight. I've been listening since last night. Big bags busting out the Bentley band, take a man, working back, party back, and know you bitches fuck. If it's up, then it's up, then it's up, then it's stuck. If it's up, then it's up, then it's up, then it's stuck.
If I was going to analyze this song, the first thing I would do is prepare the transcript. So I just went on Google and found the lyrics, but I also adjusted them for a 4-beat poetic or like musical line. So when she says, once upon a time, I heard that I was ugly, that's 4 poetic beats or 4 musical beats in one line. So the website I had them shorter. I also changed some of the markings of expletives. I used asterisks instead of lines, hyphens. So then I listened to the song again and read through my transcript and made sure that the transcript sounded or read exactly how the song sounded, right? So the internet like makes mistakes. You don't have to check it for sound or for phonetics if you're doing a more like literary analysis, right? So this is only if you want to actually analyze it on a phonetic level. You have to actually create a phonetic transcript. So that's work. So then I just start thinking about like the themes that I noticed. So I noticed themes of sexualized and gendered competition in a capitalistic context. So things about who deserves sex being connected to who has money, things like that. I noticed Cardi does this a lot. She uses a linguistic practice from the gang The Bloods where they replace first letters with B's, or they use a lot of B's. I noticed her using gender play to establish her own dominance over other women, right? So she's using some of the same gendered slurs or even being playful with her sexuality that like men would say towards women or towards other men. I also noticed a lot of braggadocio and storytelling, which I think is one of the reasons she's so compelling, even starting with Once Upon a Time, and just really like playful with her language in a way that borders on the crass, but to me is hilarious. I mean, later on in the song, she says, dirty ass, dusty ass bitch, you got pink eye. Cracks me up. Also kind of homophobic, maybe. But still, the chorus is not totally clear to me, right? If it's up, then it's stuck. So I had to, for this, really think about what Genius said, that it refers to an issue that won't go away until it's properly resolved, right? So we can keep questioning this song and think about what is up and stuck in the song. Is her career up and stuck? If you have beef with her, is that stuck? Is it, she said this term came from her partner who she's been having, relationship problems with this. Is that an issue that's up and stuck? You don't have to highly systematize your analysis. You can just close read, especially if you're doing a literary close reading. You definitely don't have to do a linguistic preparation of your transcript. But if you want to do a systematic close reading, usually it's going to start with a spreadsheet. So if you wanted to really analyze something systematically, I would say put the lines of it in a spreadsheet and make columns that will allow you to mark stuff that you want to understand about the song or about the text that you're analyzing. You could also do this with visuals. You could do it with memes. You could do it with tweets. You could do it with anything, but split it into different lines so that you can really track like what are the language features that are happening and then what are the thematic features that are happening. That brings you to a much more systematized place. It also allows you, if you want to do something, to quantify it, right? So like if you're studying someone that is code meshing or they're not always using regular AV, like you could mark all the places that they do use AV, let's say when they use a copula, and all the times that they don't, and like count and compare, but you have to separate out your data to render it countable. So a spreadsheet is part of where that starts. So I'm going to stop my recording here. So bye. So after giving y'all time to do this analysis, after giving my students time to do this analysis and me taking another listen and looking at it again, what I'm thinking that this song is really about is about domination. I don't know what you all are thinking if you're at home, listening to the song again yourselves, but what I think it's up and it's stuck is about beef with Cardi, right? If you have beef with her, it's up and it's stuck. And there's only one way that it's going to get resolved, and it's going to be with her on top, right? This whole song is about her dominating other women, her dominating men, her using her sexuality to control anyone, that she is richer than them, that she has connections with a gang, that she has wealth, she has material, and whether it's by violence or by her sexuality, in every situation, she is getting what she wants. And so you don't want to have beef with her because if it's up, it's going to be stuck. So that's my sense of what this is. But again, this talk has been all about how we can use different methods to answer our research questions. And the methods that we use are flexible according to our goals, right? So this talk has really just been about thinking thoughtfully about what methods we want to use and making sure that the methods that we do use allow us to answer the question that we have and defend the argument that comes out of it. So I'll stop us here. Good job.